Chinedu Adepoju walked through the bustling streets of Lagos, his heart heavier than the evening sky. He had just returned from a quiet dinner with Amakruma, the woman he loved, but tonight love felt like a sharp sting. Ama, always fashionable and perfectly poised, had leaned across the table with that familiar smirk and laughed at the way he spoke. "Your voice sounds ridiculous, Chinedu. No one will take you seriously," she said, her words cutting deeper than any insult he had ever heard. He felt the weight of her gaze and the embarrassment of the moment pressing down on him. Chinedu had always spoken with the soft, melodic rhythm of his small-town upbringing, and he knew his accent was thick, a constant reminder of where he came from. But he had never thought it would make someone he cared for laugh at him. That laugh replayed in his mind, echoing with each step he took along the crowded streets, past honking cars and street vendors calling out to customers. Chinedu's chest tightened. His love for Ama was real, but so was the pain of being belittled in a moment that should have been intimate. He wanted to respond, to explain that his accent carried the stories of his family, his culture, his roots, but words failed him. All he could do was turn away, letting the cool evening air brush past him as he whispered to himself, almost as a promise, "One day, they'll hear me and they'll listen." Even as he walked alone, a spark ignited in his chest. Ama's mockery, intended to wound, instead became the seed of determination. Chinedu thought of the stories he had dreamed of telling, the voice he had longed to share, the laughter and emotion he could bring to listeners if only given the chance. Tonight's hurt was sharp, but it was shaping him, forging a quiet resilience. The city hummed around him, unaware of the small man with the big dream, whose accent would one day become the very thing that made the nation stop and listen. Chinedu clenched his fists not in anger, but in resolve. Ama's laughter would not define him. The world would hear his voice, and when it did, it would be impossible to ignore. Tonight was only the beginning. Chinedu grew up in a small, dusty town far from the city lights, where everyone knew each other and stories traveled faster than the wind. From a young age, he loved listening to tales of heroes, love and life on the radio, imagining himself behind the microphone, his voice carrying stories to distant listeners. But life in a small town meant limited opportunities, and Chinedu knew that to chase his dreams, he would have to leave everything familiar behind. With a mix of hope and fear, he moved to Lagos, a city buzzing with energy, ambition and endless possibilities. It was in this vast, fast-moving city that he met Amakruma. She was everything Chinedu admired and feared: stylish, confident, socially polished and ambitious. Their connection was instant, a spark of love that promised excitement and warmth. Yet, underneath their affection, tension simmered. Ama's world was one of high expectations and appearances, and Chinedu often felt the sting of being judged for where he came from, for his soft-spoken nature, and for the accent that reminded everyone of his roots. Love and insecurity danced together in their relationship, sometimes tender, sometimes bruising. Despite the challenges, Chinedu never let go of his passion. Radio broadcasting wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. He spent hours imagining himself hosting shows, telling stories that could make people laugh, cry, or reflect on life. Every setback in the city felt lighter when he pictured the microphone in front of him, the listeners on the other side, and the power of his voice connecting worlds. Through it all, his best friend Kofi Mensah became his anchor. Kofi had always believed in Chinedu's potential, reminding him, "Your voice matters, Chinedu. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Whether they sat on a quiet rooftop watching city lights or walked through crowded markets, Kofi's words planted courage in Chinedu's heart. They talked endlessly about dreams, ambition, and the day Chinedu would finally step into the spotlight. Even as Ama's occasional criticisms gnawed at his confidence, the seed of determination grew stronger. Chinedu knew that to honor his dreams, he had to trust himself, lean on his talent, and let his stories speak louder than the doubts around him. His journey was just beginning, and the city was about to hear a voice that would not be ignored. The night was alive with music, laughter, and chatter as Lagos elite filled the stylish apartment where Ama's friends had gathered. Chinedu felt out of place among the polished crowd, his simple clothes and soft-spoken demeanor, making him feel like a shadow in a room full of lights. He tried to smile, tried to join conversations, but every word he spoke seemed to invite a glance of amusement, or worse, a snicker. Then came Ama's moment. Leaning close to her friends, she laughed, loud and sharp, making sure Chinidu heard. With that voice, you'll never make it anywhere. The words cut through the hum of music and chatter, a spotlight on his embarrassment. Faces turned, eyes flicked toward him, and Chinidu felt heat rise to his cheeks. In that instant, all the doubts he had tried to ignore pressed down on him like a weight he could not lift. Every ounce of love he had felt for Alma felt tangled with humiliation. Chinidu's heart sank as he left the party quietly, navigating the crowded streets under the flickering city lights. But as he walked, a small, stubborn flame began to grow inside him. The shame he felt would not define him. If anything, it fueled something stronger, a determination to prove her wrong, to show the world that his voice mattered. The mockery, instead of crushing him, became a challenge he could not ignore. That night, back in his modest apartment, Chinidu locked the door and pulled out his old recorder. He set up a makeshift space, careful to block out the noise of the city. With trembling hands but steady resolve, he began speaking into the microphone. Each sentence, each story, each word was a quiet rebellion against doubt and ridicule. He recorded, erased, and recorded again, polishing his voice, shaping his delivery, capturing the passion that had always burned inside him. Chinidu's heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. This secret project, this audition tape, was more than a submission for a radio spot. It was a statement. His dreams would not be silenced, his voice would not be mocked, and his story would find listeners. The city outside could laugh all it wanted, but soon, they would hear him, and they would listen. Chinidu's first day at the local community radio station felt like stepping into a new world. The hum of equipment, the flashing lights on consoles, and the constant chatter of broadcasters made him nervous, but excitement surged through him. He had signed up as a volunteer, knowing this was his first real chance to turn his secret dream into reality. As he fumbled with cables and microphones, trying to make sense of the technical chaos, he caught the eye of Nandi Okoro, a sharp, patient producer who immediately sensed his potential. "Take it slow," Nandi said with a smile, guiding him through the complicated setup. She introduced him to Oba Adeyemi, a seasoned mentor whose calm presence radiated confidence, and Deo Aramu, his co-host, whose energy and humor made the studio feel alive. Chinidu listened, absorbed everything, and tried to match their rhythm, though the technical terms and fast pace often made him stumble. Every time he hit the wrong button or mispronounced a phrase, he felt Alma's mocking voice echoing in his mind, trying to pull him back into doubt. Alma's dismissive texts continued to arrive, reminding him that she still thought he couldn't succeed. "Are you sure? This radio thing is for you?" One message read, dripping with sarcasm. But instead of letting it crush him, Chinidu used it as fuel. He arrived early, stayed late, and practiced relentlessly. Each mistake became a lesson, each small success a building block toward something bigger. Oba Adeyemi noticed his dedication. "Talent is good, but persistence is powerful," he told Chinidu after a long practice session. That encouragement lit a fire in him. Slowly his nervousness eased, and his natural storytelling charm began to shine through. Listeners started calling in, praising his warmth, humor, and honesty. The audience was small at first, just a few loyal voices, but Chinidu cherished every comment, every message, every smile that his stories brought. For the first time, he felt the thrill of being heard. The microphone was no longer intimidating. It was a bridge to the world he had always imagined. Chinidu knew this was just the beginning, but with mentors like Oba, support from allies like Nandi and Deo, and his own relentless drive, he could feel his voice growing stronger, ready to reach far beyond the small studio walls. Chinidu's journey at the radio station wasn't as smooth as he had imagined. While a few listeners had started appreciating his voice, many of the staff and even competitors doubted him. Some whispered that his accent was too thick for a wider audience, while others questioned whether his stories were interesting enough to hold attention. Every skeptical look, every casual remark made him second-guess himself. It felt like the whole world was stacked against him, and for a moment, even his determination wavered. On top of that, Alma's words followed him everywhere. Her mocking posts on social media, sharing clips of his early attempts with sarcastic captions, stung more than he wanted to admit. Each notification on his phone felt like a reminder of her laughter at the dinner table, echoing in his mind, and Chinidu struggled to block it out. Doubt crept in slowly, whispering that maybe she was right, that maybe his voice wasn't enough. His first live broadcast became the tipping point. Chinedu had rehearsed countless hours, pouring emotion and energy into every word, but the nerves took over. He stumbled over phrases, mispronounced names, and the technical glitches only added to his panic. Listeners noticed, and the calls and messages that came in afterward were mixed, some kind, some critical. Humiliated and exhausted, Chinedu sat alone in the quiet studio afterward, feeling the weight of failure press down. He thought about quitting, about giving up the dream that had carried him from a small town to the city, wondering if he was simply not meant for this. It was then that Nandi Okoro, his mentor and guiding light at the station, sat beside him. She didn't offer empty praise or dismiss the criticism. Instead, she looked him in the eye and said softly but firmly, "Chinedu, the world doesn't need your accent to hear your heart. They will feel your passion, your truth. Keep going." Her words struck a chord deep inside him, reminding him why he started and what he wanted to share. Chinedu breathed deeply, letting her encouragement wash over him. He realized that criticism, doubt, and fear were just obstacles to be faced, not walls to stop him. That night, he promised himself he would rise again, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever, ready to turn his passion into something unforgettable. The day of Chinedu's big segment arrived, and the studio buzzed with energy. He had prepared tirelessly, scripting stories that were funny, heartfelt, and sprinkled with the charm of his regional accent. As the red on-air light glowed, a mix of nerves and excitement surged through him. This wasn't just another broadcast. It was his moment to prove, first to himself, then to the world, that his voice mattered. He took a deep breath, smiled at his co-host Deo, nodded to producer Nandi, and began speaking. From the first words, Chinedu captivated listeners. He wove tales of everyday life in his hometown, the quirks of family, the laughter of friends, and the struggles that shaped him. His accent, once a source of ridicule, added warmth and authenticity, drawing listeners in rather than pushing them away. The humor landed perfectly, the emotions felt real, and the honesty in his voice resonated with everyone tuned in. Calls started flooding in immediately, messages pouring through social media channels, and soon the station's servers were buzzing with excitement. People shared clips, laughing, crying, and tagging friends, amazed at the unique voice they had just discovered. Somewhere across the city, Amma saw it for the first time. A friend had sent her the link, and as she listened, disbelief and shock replaced her usual smug confidence. The same voice she had mocked, the same accent she had ridiculed, was now captivating hundreds, then thousands of listeners. Comments praising his talent and authenticity streamed in relentlessly. Amma's laughter was gone, replaced by stunned silence. Within hours, the segment spread beyond the community station. Media outlets picked it up, posting clips online, and featuring Chinedu on morning shows. National attention grew as journalists and influencers highlighted his storytelling, the charm of his accent, and his unique perspective. Chinedu went from a quiet volunteer to a recognized talent almost overnight. The city, and soon the country, was listening. In that moment, Chinedu realized something powerful. His voice wasn't just being heard, it was celebrated. What had once been a source of shame became his signature, and the public's reaction confirmed what he had always believed deep down. Talent, authenticity, and heart always shine through. His turning point had arrived, and there was no looking back. After the viral broadcast, Chinedu's life changed almost overnight. Invitations started pouring in from larger radio stations. Across Lagos and beyond, podcast hosts reached out, eager to feature the young storyteller whose voice had captured the hearts of thousands. Every new opportunity was a chance to reach a bigger audience, and Chinedu approached each one with the same passion and authenticity that had made his first segment so powerful. He arrived at new studios, met hosts he had once admired from afar, and quickly proved that his talent was real, not just a fleeting internet sensation. One morning, Chinedu found himself being interviewed for a major news segment focused on rising African broadcasters. Cameras, lights, and journalists surrounded him, yet he felt calm, almost at home. The interviewers asked about his accent, about the ridicule he had faced, and about the sudden fame. Chinedu smiled and said something that would echo across social media. "Your voice is your power. Accent is just flavor." The statement resonated deeply, inspiring viewers and listeners across the continent. Clips of the interview went viral, shared widely by people who related to his journey, who had faced their own doubts, and who were moved by his courage and authenticity. Meanwhile, Alma could no longer ignore the wave of attention. She saw news articles, viral clips, and social media posts celebrating the man she had once mocked. The realization hit her hard. She had underestimated him. The same voice she had laughed at had become a national symbol of resilience and talent. She watched as listeners praised Chinedu not just for his storytelling, but for the confidence and heart that shone through every word. Chinedu's rise wasn't just about fame. It was about recognition for his persistence, his passion, and his authenticity. Each new interview, podcast, and radio slot expanded his reach, allowing him to connect with audiences far beyond the city where his journey had begun. He had proven that ridicule could not silence talent, and that embracing one's true self, accent, flaws, and all, was more powerful than fitting into anyone else's expectations. In the process, Chinedu became more than a rising star. He became an inspiration, a reminder that dreams combined with dedication could overcome every doubt and mockery along the way. Alma found herself standing outside the small studio where Chinedu had started his journey, her phone buzzing constantly with notifications of his latest interviews and viral segments. She had watched him rise from the quiet, self-conscious young man she once mocked to a nationally recognized voice, admired by thousands. Guilt and curiosity tangled inside her, and she knew she had to see him, to say something, even if she wasn't sure what that something should be. When Chinedu opened the door, Alma tried to play it casual, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face and smiling nervously. Chinedu, I just wanted to say, you've really done amazing things. I never realized. Her words faltered, unsure whether she was apologizing or attempting charm. The confidence she usually carried was replaced by uncertainty, and Chinedu noticed immediately. He stood tall, calm, and poised, a stark contrast to the man she had laughed at months ago. His eyes held quiet strength, his voice steady and firm as he replied, Alma, I didn't need your approval to succeed. The nation already heard me. The words weren't just spoken. They carried the weight of every late night, every practice session, every doubt he had faced and conquered. Every listener who had celebrated him, every mentor who had believed in him, every moment he had fought for his dream resonated in that single statement. Alma's face shifted through a storm of emotions. First shock, as the reality of his transformation hit her, then regret, as she remembered the laughter and dismissive words she had thrown at him. Finally, admiration settled in, quiet but undeniable. She realized that Chinedu's success was never dependent on her opinion or anyone else's. It was the result of talent, persistence, and an unshakable belief in himself. For Chinedu, this confrontation was not about proving her wrong. It was about owning his journey and claiming the recognition he had earned. Alma could see it clearly now. The man before her was someone who had turned ridicule into power, doubt into determination, and mockery into a voice that inspired a nation. As she walked away, her respect for him replaced any lingering pride or charm. Chinedu smiled softly, returning to his work, confident, grounded, and completely untouchable by the judgments of those who once tried to belittle him. Chinedu's success on the airwaves opened doors, but he never forgot where he came from. Remembering the small-town streets where his dreams first took shape, he decided to use his growing platform to uplift others. He began mentoring young people from rural areas, helping them discover their own voices, and teaching them that talent and determination mattered far more than polish or social status. Each call, message, or letter from a young listener reminded him of the impact his voice could have, and he embraced the responsibility with pride and humility. His radio show evolved into more than just entertainment. It became a hub for culture, stories, and community voices. Chinedu invited guests from diverse backgrounds, shared tales of local traditions, and gave everyday people a chance to speak and be heard. From farmers and artisans to students and local musicians, the show reflected the richness of African life, blending humor, wisdom, and heartfelt experiences. Listeners tuned in not just for stories, but for connection, laughter, and inspiration. Chinedu's authenticity resonated with audiences. Unlike many who chase trends or try to fit a mold, he stayed true to himself, celebrating his accent, his roots, and the struggles that shaped him. People respected him not only for his talent but for the resilience he displayed, for turning mockery and doubt into motivation. Calls, messages, and social media comments poured in, filled with gratitude, admiration, and encouragement. His voice became a symbol of hope, a reminder that staying true to yourself could inspire millions. Even Amma, who had once mocked him, watched quietly from a distance. She admired the man Chinedu had become, not just a rising star, but a leader who empowered others. She saw that real talent wasn't about appearances, social status, or perfection. It was about heart, dedication, and the courage to keep going despite criticism. Chinedu had transformed ridicule into influence, and admiration followed naturally, even from those who had doubted him. Through mentorship, storytelling, and unwavering authenticity, Chinedu left a lasting legacy. His journey showed that success was measured not just in fame, but in the lives touched, the voices uplifted, and the inspiration shared. He had become more than a broadcaster. He was a guide, a storyteller, and a symbol of what it meant to rise above mockery and make a difference. The studio was alive with energy as Chinedu prepared to close his latest major radio segment. Today, thousands across the nation were tuned in, waiting to hear the stories, laughter, and lessons he had carefully crafted. Sitting behind the microphone, he felt a calm confidence that had been hard-earned over months of struggle, ridicule, and perseverance. He thought back to the private moments of doubt, to Amma's mocking words, to the nights he had stayed up perfecting his voice, and to every listener who had reached out, inspired or encouraged by his storytelling. As the segment drew to a close, Chinedu's voice softened but remained steady. He spoke not just to entertain, but to inspire. "Your voice is yours," he said, each word deliberate. "Never let anyone make you feel small for it. Your story, your accent, your truth, they are powerful. They matter." Across the nation, listeners paused, reflecting on the authenticity and courage behind his words. Calls and messages poured in, overflowing with gratitude, pride, and awe. For many, Chinedu's journey was not just entertainment. It was a reminder that self-belief could overcome any obstacle, no matter how harsh the criticism. The applause from the live audience in the studio swelled, echoing through the broadcast waves, a powerful symbol of his journey coming full circle. Chinedu smiled, thinking of the small-town streets where his dreams were born, of the mentors and friends who had believed in him, and even of Amma, who had doubted him yet witnessed his rise. Every struggle, every late night, every moment of fear had led to this triumph. He wasn't just a broadcaster now. He was a voice of resilience, authenticity, and hope, reaching listeners across cities, towns, and villages. As the segment ended, Chinedu leaned back, letting the applause wash over him. He felt a quiet satisfaction, a deep knowing that he had claimed his place not through validation from others, but through his own determination and talent. The microphone, once intimidating, had become a symbol of his journey and his victory. Tonight, the nation had heard him, respected him, and celebrated him. And in that moment, Chinedu realized he had truly arrived, confident, self-assured, and unstoppable.